So hello and welcome to today's Lunchinar, all about getting found online, the wonders of search engine optimization and the power of Google Ads. To give you a bit of a background, for those of you who have joined so far, we're running these Lunchinar sessions. I'm from Ionic Digital, we're running them alongside SABs. They're all about bite-sized learning to just upskill people that haven't got those skills. And when you start Googling things through the power of SEO, it is a minefield of knowing what's right, what's wrong, which direction to take. So the sessions are completely free. On average, you're about 30 or 40 minutes, although last week's one, I think, was nearly an hour of me waffling on about social media. And even then, I probably didn't cover everything. We've got a small question and answer session at the end. There tends to be a free takeaway, which are available on the Lunchinar website. And they're free to rewatch on the website, as Roger said earlier. So just to give you a bit of an overview of me, I run a small little agency, Southend based, work with clients locally. I don't particularly like working with clients too far afield because I like to have that sort of one-to-one interaction by going to see them. Class myself as a micro agency. It's me along with a very small team of specialists that focus on particular areas. I've been doing this for well over 15 years now. Launched a fair few websites in that time. I don't believe in technobabble. I can talk on a very technical level if you'd want to, but I don't think that actually helps in most situations. And as it says there, I don't believe in the whole bullshit approach. Keep things nice and simple. Sorry, Roger, you might have to beep that one out. So, quick recap on where we've been so far. So, in week one, we covered the basics of digital marketing. With week two, we had a look at websites and how to get your organization online and some design stuff. And then week three, we looked at interaction using things like social media to actually help get your message out. All of those are available, as Roger mentioned earlier, on the SABS website. If you go to the /Lunchinars, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see the collection of the ones that have already run. Make a cup of tea, make a cup of coffee, sit back and watch. So this week's session, search engine optimization, the big buzzword, SEO. What is it? It's basically making your website appear higher in Google. And the higher you appear in Google, the more people that are likely to click on the link. We use a lot of acronyms, things like SERPs, which is a search engine results page. But the main thing about search engine optimization is it's organic. It's a lot of hard work. There are little bits of paid elements that I'll talk about a bit further down the line. But it's very much about how to get your website to number one. Why Google? And this is a question I get asked a lot when we start talking about search engine optimization, because I refer to Google about everything. The main reason is 92% of the market share in terms of any searching online happens through Google. If you get it right for Google, the others follow. They set the benchmark and the others, as I said, it follows. Now, that actually came to the detriment of Bing a few years ago, which is Microsoft's search platform, where they were found to have been copying Google results because no one could understand why the search results in Bing were almost identical to the ones in Google. So Google created some fake search results, which then appeared on Bing. And there's no way that could have happened without them copying data. And there's quite a lengthy lawsuit and a fair few millions of pounds that had to be passed over. So that's why we use Google as the sort of benchmark. Some interesting facts about search engines in general. Nearly 70% of all experiences in terms of websites start with search engines. That starts with someone typing something into Google. 93% of the traffic comes from Google Search, Google Images, and Google Maps. That's a huge amount. Google actively maintains an index of it's over 400 billion documents, and defined by document, web page, PDF, anything like that. I mean, 400 billion is a huge number, and it's ever growing. Now, there's an argument to say that some documents drop off as more come in, but it's still a huge number to index. And when we're talking about search engine optimization and how the things like the Google bots crawl for information, there's a reason that they can't happen instantly because they've got 400 billion to maintain. So that's why it tends to take 1, 2, maybe even 3 weeks to start seeing results come through. There's an estimated, and I found this one quite hard to sort of comprehend, 3.5 billion searches a day. I mean, from a techie side, trying to understand how Google have built their platform to be able to cope with that many people and that many searches, it's pretty incredible. I found this one quite interesting as well. 15% of Google searches have never actually been searched before. So sometimes when you're searching for something, you could well be the first person to ever searched for that, or at least searched for that in that exact form. And one of the things Google helps now is when you start typing a particular search query, they'll kind of second guess what you might mean based on previous search trends and also using AI. But it's quite interesting that, yeah, 15% never been searched before. And the most Googled word is YouTube, which, yeah, considering that Google bought YouTube quite a few years ago for a hefty amount of money, I found it quite ironic that people use Google to find Google's other product. What is a Google or Google? It's a number. In decimal form, it's one followed by 100 zeros, which is 1 times 10 to the 100 for those maths geeks. It was a misspelling of the word Google. 25 years old this year in September. They've got some big plans of what they're going to be doing. And you'll probably notice that on Google, they tend to change their graphic. They've got some special ones coming up for that. The reason they chose that number, the idea that the founders came up with was that they wanted to show that it could handle large quantities of data. And a Google is an extremely large number. That's where the name came from. So you didn't think this would be a history lesson at the same time. Right, SEO buzzwords. Sorry, 2 seconds. So I was just asking if I want some lunch from McDonald's. SEO buzzwords, should have said yes. Right, I've picked up some of the buzzwords that we use in this industry. SERP being one of them. I mentioned it earlier. It stands for Search Engine Results Page. It's the page you see whenever you type a query. So the results you get, that is your SERP. They're typically page 1, page 2, page 3. There's a kind of a bit of inside joke in the industry. No, best place to hide a dead body would be on page 2 because no one ever goes there. People are much more likely to really find their search time and time again to find what they want instead of having to scroll through pages and pages of content. An algorithm it's basically just a formula, but it's used by search engines to determine what the query should be. So they use a lot of different factors on page, off page within a website to determine where your website should rank within the search results. They are the Google algorithms. There's been many over the years. They're the unspoken rules. Things like panda, penguin, pigeon, hummingbirds. The only thing they've got in common, apart from being birds, is the fact that these are big updates that Google have done. Within this industry, we don't get notifications when they're coming. There's a lot of chatter in various forums about talking what's going to happen next. And you know when they've happened because all of a sudden your lovely graph that's got this sort of upwards trajectory starts going like this because it's when Google kind of sort of re-indexes pages based on their latest algorithm updates. Backlinks is any link of a website, of another website coming back to your website. There's a big thing about building backlinks, and the next slide we talk about link building, but be very careful. Sometimes fewer backlinks have more value than a lot of backlinks. So if we go back a few years, people used to talk about, I've got 10,000 backlinks to my site. That could be a really good number. But if they're 10,000 Russian hairdressers, they don't really value much. One backlink from BBC would heavily outrank all of those. So this moves on to link building. So if you think of the internet as this large connection of websites, which is exactly what it is a web of interconnecting pages. The more backlinks you have from people, it helps build your authority because Google will look at it and say, well, actually, if 20 other websites are linking to this website, there must be something valuable on this website. It can be easier than you think to sort of build backlinks. Sometimes by just asking other people in the industry to say, hey, look, can we have a section on our website that talks about other people? If so, can we put a link to your website? And in turn, can you put a link to our website? By creating those kind of links of links, so those connections of links together will help start build a link profile for your domain name. Keyword density, in a nutshell, it's how many times you mention keywords in certain areas of your website, i.e. within the content. There is a fine line though. Years ago, I worked with a guy that did memory foam mattresses, and the opening paragraph of his website was, we are the specialists in selling memory foam mattresses. Memory foam mattresses are the best you could ever buy. Did you know that if you sleep on a memory foam mattress, blah, 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 memory foam mattress, blah, 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 memory foam mattress. It was too much. It's called keyword stuffing. It's when you try and put too many keywords into a bit of text. You want to mention the keywords, but you also need it to be readable as a human without sounding horrendous. So yeah, but my top tip there was sometimes less is more. Mobile first came in about 3 or 4 years ago now, and it's one of Google's big changes with their algorithms. And they basically said that they're going to start ranking websites on how they perform on mobile more than they prefer more than they perform on desktop. So actually, to have your website run really, really well on a mobile device is better than having it run really well on a desktop device. That's something in terms of, it's called responsive design. We covered that in week 2. But at the moment, on average, 60% of web traffic is through mobile devices, things like mobile phones, tablets. So Google have put a big focus on making sure that websites are optimized for mobile, especially when you think of things like 3G, 4G, 5G technology, where the internet connection isn't necessarily stable. So it's making sure that your website renders correctly mobile versus desktop. Load times, so kind of following on from mobile first, load times are really important. So the time it takes for your website to load fully, that includes pictures, videos, and content. The easy win for a lot of people is a lot of people tend to have like a hero image at the top of the page. Normally, you just upload a really high-res image. Actually, if you optimize that image and took it from maybe 2 megabytes down to 500 kilobytes, that would have a really big impact on the load time and also have an impact on the first contentful paint. This is a term used, it's normally just an acronym of FCP, but it's the time it takes for a browser to completely render your page. Google kind of dictate that it should be less than 1.8 seconds, which is still quite a long time. Most websites, if you want it to rank quite well, should fit under a second. And I've put there about a top tip of reducing the number of images, reducing the quality of those images, and sometimes using tools like lazy load tools. And what that is it's a technology that basically doesn't render an image on the page until your page scrolls to that point. So if you think of it, you've got 300 pictures on a page, actually it only loads the top 4. As you start to scroll down, then it starts loading those other images. So instead of putting a big load on the server to begin with to try and download all that data, it kind of drip feeds the data, which makes it quicker to load and faster for the user experience. And I appreciate that I'm kind of giving people a lot of information and to a degree waffling. If you've got any questions on any of this, we've got a Q&A session at the end. Don't be afraid to ask any questions. Note them down now and we'll come back to them towards the end. Metadata, it's a basic one, but it's a really important one. Most pages will have a title and description tags, and it doesn't really matter what platform you've used to build your website, you'll have access to change this data. But it's really important because it's what's used by Google to sort of show what your page is about. So when you look at a Google results page, you get your title come up, you get your URL underneath, then you get a description. They tend to take that description from what is in your meta description field. Sometimes they might take it from content further down the page, but if you can make sure you've got a nice, simple, concise, to the point message in your meta description, that's what Google will use. Heading tags, another really simple one for people to do. It's about creating a hierarchy of the structure of the content of the website. So if you think of it that you have a H1, which is a heading 1 tag, is your most important statement. And then a bit like you would have in a document, you have a heading 2, heading 3, but you could have multiple heading 3s within a heading 2. It's about creating that kind of structure that follows down the page. And Google uses that to index the information to help determine where you should be ranked. You should only ever have one H1 tag on a page. Structured data is another Google thing. They link in with a platform called schema.org, and it's about creating snippets of information that makes it really simple for search engines, especially Google, to evaluate your information. So if we look at some examples there of products, news, and jobs, we'll take news. You could have a news page that could have a title and a date and a description of what the news story is about. But actually, if you format that into structured data, which is code that works behind the scenes, you tell Google that that is the title, that is the date, and that is the description, then Google doesn't have to think about it. It can just look at the page and know that's the important bits. If you're using things like WordPress, it does it for you. Various other platforms, I think Wix does it for you now as well. It didn't used to, but it does now. But depending on the platform you've got built for your website, it's definitely something to look at, especially if you list jobs, especially if you list products. It's a very good, useful little tool. When we talk about traffic, in broad terms, it covers how many people have come to your website, but it's broken down into a few different sort of areas. You've got direct, organic, paid, and referral. So if we look at them individually, direct traffic, anyone that's gone straight to your URL, whether that be they've typed it into the search bar, whether that be that they've had it saved as a favorite, clicked on a favorite, that would all be classed as direct. Organic traffic is from search engines. It's what search engine optimization is all about. It's about people that have clicked, or the traffic that's come via Google or another search engine to your website. Paid traffic, anything like Google Ads, so any paid platform. And then you've got referral traffic, so people that have come from another web page. So if you've got a backlink on someone else's web page and they click that link to come to your website, that'd be classed as a referral link. There's a bit of a crossover between paid and referral, in as much as if you're running paid social media ads, technically it's paid traffic, but it will normally come up as referral traffic because it would be referred from Facebook or Meta. So there's kind of a bit of a crossover there. Bounce rate is how long it takes for someone to leave your site. The higher the bounce rate, the lower you get ranked. And it comes down to people that might search for something, land on your website, and then leave within just a few seconds without really browsing, taking a look around. It's an important metric that's used by Google to as I say, as a metric for SEO. You can get that information from Google Analytics if you've got it set up. If you haven't got it set up, I urge you to set it up. It's free and it offers you a wealth of information about how people are interacting with your website. Sometimes it's useful to use the bounce rate and say, okay, people are going to a particular page and bouncing off it very quickly. Why is that? And you can start to analyze pages and think, well, actually, how can we improve the bounce rate, which would be to reduce the bounce rate. So there's some useful tools there that are free to use. Alt text, very often overlooked. It's basically search engines can't see images yet. There's technology that's been developed using AI, but they can't see an image. So say if you've got a picture of a frog on a white background, we know what that is, but a search engine doesn't know what that is. So what you can do is add alt text, which is a shortened version of alternative text, that basically says to any device, if the picture can't be loaded, this is what it was. So show this text as an alternative. So when Google is looking at your page and looking at the information, if you've got an alt tag that sits with an image, you can tell Google what that image is to help them rank your page based on what the image content would be, which is a long way of describing it. I hope everyone understands the basics of it. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It doesn't have to be complex. If you've got a group of people, just say a group of people. You don't have to go into details of who they are, what they're doing, anything like that. It's just a short one-line description. But Google will use that when they're reviewing your page. Spiders, bots, and crawlers, they're all tools that search engines use to evaluate the information on your page. So when you pass a page through a bot, it will look at the information, it will look at the content you've got, hierarchy of data, sometimes even the way it's been laid out, and then give it a metric which helps indicate where it would appear on a search engine results page. So there's lots of different factors that have an impact. And all of these might be like little bits, 1% here, 2% here. But if we look at the principle of marginal gains, every little 1% increase you can make, actually at the end of it, you've got something pretty good. White hat SEO. Basically, SEO is a bit of an unknown factor. You can do lots and lots of work, but there's no exact science to it. What works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. There's a set of guidelines that we all follow, but one of the big important things is making sure it's ethical. You make sure that you've got good, solid content that's been written by you about your particular product, service, or charity, whatever it might be. Making sure that it's valuable content, make sure it's geared towards humans, not machines. These are all good things. It's all about making it ethical. I mentioned earlier things like Russian hairdressers. There used to be a movement a couple of years ago where you could get 10,000 backlinks for $100. It's wasted money because it's not ethical. It's not going to give you long-lasting results. It might give you sort of very short improvements. You might see a big increase for a month, but then Google will very quickly derank you based on some non-ethical tactics. which is where we introduce the dark side. So as much as you've got white hat SEO, there's also black hat SEO. And these are the tactics that you really need to avoid, because you might get short-term wins, but you'll get long-time losses. And actually trying to recover from those losses is really hard. It's a very long process and it can be very costly. So if anyone ever comes to you, I get emails all the time from people saying, I can offer you 5 backlinks, it'll only cost you $10. You think, oh, that sounds quite cheap. It's really not worth the money. It will cause you more harm in the future. So in terms of black hat SEO, it's about using dubious and banned practices. So using things like PBNs, which are blogging, the private blogging sites, to create backlinks, using fake pages, fake profiles on other websites. So it's about creating fake content all over the place to try and direct people back to you. And then using things like Trojans, viruses, and malware to almost harm other people's websites for the gain of your website. They're all no-nos. Please don't do them. Anyway, more positive note. How do I make my website number 1 on Google? It's a hard process. You're the tortoise, you're not the hare. It takes a long time to build it up. Sometimes months, sometimes years, sometimes decades to actually start to get results. But don't let that put you off. It depends very much on who your target audience is and what you deem as success. If you're only looking to target local people, actually you can get really good results from very little effort. If you want to go national, okay, it's harder because you've got a much larger portion of the pie to deal with. If you're looking global, that can be very costly. There's 2 main types of SEO tactics. They're classed as on-page, off-page. Pretty simple. Anything on-page is stuff that you edit on the page, very normally within your control, especially if you've got access to things like WordPress, things like Wix. Off-page stuff, normally outside of your control. It'll be things like building backlinks, referral websites, things like that. But both are quite important when you're creating an SEO strategy. And normally if you're working with an agency, they should cover both these areas quite well. Not all of them are easy to do. Some you might need some help with, but there are quite a lot of things that people could do very quickly and easily themselves. So when we talk about on-page stuff, we're thinking things like URL structures. So when you've got mywebsite.com/news/ I've just launched this product, that'd be classed as a good URL. What a lot of people tend to do is copy a page, and then when you look at the URL structure, it'll be mywebsite.com/news/ copy of page 1. That's not very nice. That's not very nice for anyone to save as a favorite. You can't really send that to anyone as a link, but also Google kind of doesn't look kindly on that sort of thing. Optimizing your page title, keeping it simple, keeping it concise, put the core message in there. Adding a meta description, again, should only be 1 short paragraph. You don't need to, it's not chapter and verse about everything you do. It's about a short snippet of information. Make sure you've got relevant keywords within your body copy. If you've got a particular product, my headphone case here, I wouldn't start talking about a booklet or a magazine because it's not relevant to what I've searched for. Use images, graphics, and other visuals, i.e. videos, where you can. Anything animated is always good, but be very wary on making sure that they're optimized for view on websites. Adding alt tags. Anytime you've got an image on a website, you should have an alt tag next to it. It's hidden until the image can't be seen, but it's seen by screen readers and things like that. So if you've got anyone that's visually impaired going to the website that might not be able to see a picture, by having the alt text, it can help that person sort of understand what that image should be. And add internal links between pages. There's nothing worse than having something called an orphan page, which is maybe used for a specific marketing campaign, but you should always link that page via not necessarily the main navigation. It could be like a sub navigation. It could be on a page, but you should never have a page that sits on as an orphan with no links going to or from it. So that's on page. Off page, this is where it becomes a little bit more tricky, and sometimes you need quite a lot of help. A lot of the tools that are used to generate some of this stuff can be quite costly. But what you could do is link up with an agency. I happen to know one, that can sort of give you some of this information that you can go away and work with, and then you can use it to kind of reference at certain points to get an idea of where you're going. So in terms of off-page stuff, we're talking about what your backlink profile is. So if we were to do a search of a website and you get a backlink profile, you might come back with 20 backlinks. Some of them might be from places you know, some of them might not be. Then you can sort of identify which ones are useful, which ones are not. There's a whole metric structure behind what what a good backlink is, and I'll cover that in a little bit. Optimizing for local SEO, a lot of people miss out on some of the basic stuff. Yeah, sometimes as simple as actually adding, if you're looking at local reserves, include something like Southend-on-Sea within your meta description. If you're a charity or an organisation based in Southend, say you're based in Southend, because when Google comes to rank your information or to review it, they'll note that down as being part of your profile, so that it knows when someone searches for something specific within Southend that you're more of an authoritative subject on that. You can use things like Google Maps and create a business page, and you can add a whole load of information on that. Because it's another Google service, the information crosses over between their search results and Google business listings, so that they're kind of good to have, and they're very easy to do and free to do. And also sharing content on social media. People just think, oh, it's social media, but actually it has a bit of weight, not a great deal, but again, we're talking about those little marginal gains. If you start posting links that go back to your website from things like Facebook and Instagram, they all tick boxes. They all add little points into the system, which help you become, as I say, a more authoritative subject. Content is king. Everything SEO related drives back to this thing about content. Content is the most powerful thing on your website. Make sure it's unique. Make sure it's to the point. Make sure it's meaningful around your particular subject area. I talk about content in some of the other slides coming up, so I won't dwell on that one too much. Add a mission statement, or at least a very short paragraph about what it is you do, but make it your H1 tag, your heading 1, because Google, we spoke about like hierarchical structure, it will see it as being the most important thing on the page. When it comes to the rest of the page, use things like headings 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, to sort of distinguish what are the more important elements of your page. Blogs is a great way to get content onto your website. I cover some of that in a slide coming up, but keeping your website up to date with fresh content is a really good thing to do. Just make it relevant, or as relevant as you can. I sort of gave a couple of examples of the URL structure earlier. It's a really important thing. It takes seconds to do, but it's quite important. Make sure you've got no copy pages. If you're going to copy a page, make sure you change that URL to make it relevant to what the page is about. Don't use AI unless it's for ideas. Don't ask ChatGPT to write the content for your website. It's a big no-no. Google knows what's being written by AI. There's some websites you can go to and you can analyze content to see if it has been written by AI. It's a big thing in our industry at the moment where people are coming up with blogs left, right, and center. It's all plagiarized. All ChatGPT does is take content from another website, regurgitate it slightly, and outputs it. It's not the right thing to do, but there is a way around it. Talking of content, user-generated content, I stole this slide from the presentation I did on social media, because actually you can use other people to generate content for your website. So if you've got a small community of people that have got an interest in your organization, you can go to them and say, hey, could you write me a blog, please? I'm working with a company at the moment. They're doing a conference in a couple of months' time. They've asked every speaker of the conference to create a blog that can go on their website. It's cross-purpose, it's cross-promotion, but it's a good way of getting fresh ideas for content onto your website. Customer reviews, great way to get content on there, testimonials, real-life stories, if you can keep those up to date. These are all fresh content ideas that you can keep adding to the website. Likewise, evergreen content is content that you would normally put on the website, but you can repurpose for social media. So they kind of cross over both areas. So you can have things on there about frequently asked questions. You can have glossaries and definitions. And if you think about what keywords people might be searching for, actually having a glossary on your website that references those keywords is a way of adding the keyword without stuffing it into something that's got no context within. Now we come to some of the tools that you can use for content. I'm just going to take a sip of my water. So there are some really useful and powerful tools out there. Some of them are free. Most of them offer a free sort of trial insight into what it can do. One of the best ones that I absolutely love is Answer the Public. You get 2 free searches a day, then you have to start paying to make those searches count. But if you go to answerthepublic.com, it's a website that's now run by a guy called Neil Patel, who's seen as like the guru of anything related to SEO in the world. It's a really powerful website. You can put any search term in there, and it will start to give you an idea of how many people are searching for various things. So really annoyingly, I've cut the most valuable bit off this page, but I'd urge you to go and do some test searching. But it will help you identify what keywords, long tail and short tail keywords people are searching for, and actually give you ideas of content that you can add to your website to create that content that's relevant to that particular term. You can, as you can see there at the search bar at the top, you can indicate what the search term is, and then you can choose what country and what language. You can also use it for Bing, YouTube, and Amazon stuff as well. And what they do is they sort of aggregate loads of information from Google and various other platforms to give you some really good results. So that's a really good, useful tool. ChatGPT, whilst I said AI is a big no-no, actually you can use it to your advantage. I've given an example there. I did a search for recommending some blog topics related to Southend-on-Sea. And as you'll see, it's created, I think there's a list of about 20 different titles. As a title, some of these are really good. So exploring the history of Southend-on-Sea from fishing village to seaside resort. That's a really good little title. And actually, if you can generate some content off the back of that, that's the type of thing you can use AI for. Don't rely on it to write everything, but use it for ideas. And also don't forget that anything ChatGPT, if you're using the free version, it's a couple of years old now. So if you're looking for more up-to-date regular stuff, you might need to either pay for it or look at other ideas. Grammarly, brilliant tool, especially for plagiarism. So one of the things that Google doesn't like on websites is when you basically just steal paragraphs of other people's website, copy as your own. The reason being, Google doesn't know who wrote it originally. It doesn't know who the more authoritative person is on a particular subject. So if you are going to repurpose content, which I'd really push you not to, if you are, don't completely copy it word for word. Use something like Grammarly. If you just search for plagiarism checker, this Grammarly site will come up. You can copy and paste your text in, and it will tell you the percentage of text that's been copied from other places. And I've been caught out with this because sometimes you take website from a content that you think is original content, and then when you plagiarize check it, it's actually been stolen from someone else. So be really careful with it, but make sure your content is unique. So there's cut tools there. Backlinks. These can be easy to generate. They can be a little bit more tricky. In our world of backlinking, when we're trying to sort of generate 3 or 4 good quality backlinks each month, you start off with a great intention and it becomes really, really difficult to get some really juicy ones. But when it comes to it, make sure you've got some compelling content that someone might want to link to. So if you've written a particular blog about a subject, think, well, who else might want this on their website? What you can do is you can share that content with them. They can then summarize it, but have a backlink that goes back to your website. It's a simple way of doing it. Some people will do it for free. Sometimes webmasters want to charge you $50, $100, $150 for that privilege. Be a bit wary of it. I wouldn't go crazy spending too much money. That's when you need to speak to an agency to really help you find the good quality ones. Because on the front of it, it might look like a lovely, shiny website that's going to backlink to you. But actually, if the metrics behind it aren't worth much, it's a waste of money. And there's domain ratings. There's a whole load of metrics behind it, which I won't go into because they're really lengthy. But it goes back to that principle of actually having one backlink from BBC. It has more weight to it than having 100 backlinks from small, tiny little one-page websites. So sorry, I'm waffling on. Leverage any partnerships you can, any collaborations. So, one of the things I'm going to speak to Roger at some point is about me creating some content to go onto the SABS website so that I can generate a backlink to my own website and hopefully vice versa. Press releases, if you've ever done any press releases, send them out to as many media outlets as you can. Don't be afraid to ask for a backlink. As my mum keeps telling me, never be afraid to ask. The worst anyone is going to say is no. Ask, and ask away. But one thing to always remember, that building backlinks, it's patience, persistence, and commitment. It's not going to happen overnight. You might be able to get 5 or 6 backlinks very quickly, and then it'll start to drain off. It's just a very slow, progressive way of doing it. There are some useful tools for generating some backlinks. And actually, I've forgotten, I did these screenshots about the domain rating for these 2 websites. So it's a score of 0 to 100. You can see there that bbc.co.uk has got a score of 93. There's not many sites that rank higher than that. Even Google doesn't rank higher than that. Southend, not that I want to discredit any work that Roger's done, but it's only got a ranking of 35. And there's lots of factors within that. It's because it probably hasn't got loads and loads of backlinks. It has, I can see it's just done a thumbs down. I can see that so there's probably not loads of backlinks. It's only 826 compared to 351 million. So you can see there's a slight difference there. And also, if you see there, the linking websites. So BBC have got 1.1 million websites linking to them. Stabs have only got 149. So there's an argument to say that if Roger did a bit more work, I know he's really busy anyway, but you could start to build the profile by doing it that way. Where I was going with this originally is there's some sort of tools out there. So Ahrefs is an SEO tool that people can use. They've got some free stuff on there. Then it goes onto a paid platform, which is about £50 a month for the base one. These are some of their tools here. So you've got a free keyword checker, a keyword difficulty checker, which will help indicate how hard it will be to rank for a certain keyword. And certain industries are really challenging. That's when it comes to sort of a national status, not a local status. You've also got things like link building, so backlink checker, broken link checker, which is another thing to be wary of. If you've got lots of backlinks going to your website, but they're all broken backlinks, actually they devalue the sort of quality of those backlinks. And you can also check out a website's authority. So that's Ahrefs. We've also got Moz. They've got their own version, another SEO tool. They've got some free stuff out there. So I did a search for the SAVs, and you can see here, these are some of the incoming link domains. So things like Mirror, Eventbrite, Linktree, Standard. These are all really good ones. And you can see where it values the pages based on how many links they've got coming in. Obviously, the homepage has got the most, and then it looks like they've got some directory listings that have got quite a few as well. And then last but no means least, SEMrush is another SEO tool. I actually spend about £700 a month on this tool, but we use it for lots of different clients. But it's got some free tools within it, especially when it comes to helping write content. So it's not quite AI, but it uses some AI technology to help you write good quality content. So that's worth a look. Right, so that's kind of covered quite a lot of SEO kind of topics. And as I say, I could spend days talking about it. But there are some other free there's some other free training that people can do, especially within Google, and there's some other tools that we're going to cover in a second. I'd urge everyone to have a look at this Google Digital Garage. Anytime that I've got a new employee that we work with, we get them to go through this process. Google offer a host of information, and they class themselves a one-stop shop for every kind of learner. It gives you a bit of knowledge about every single one of Google's tools, and there's a lot of them. Things like Google Analytics, YouTube, Google Insights, there's keyword ranking stuff. There's quite a lot of stuff in there. Some of it's really intense, so you'd probably want to start with the basics. You get a nice little certificate at the end of it, and it's a really good thing to do. And then more importantly than anything, it's free, so it's definitely worth a look. The other thing we sort of spoke about, or the other topic of today's discussion, is talking about Google Ads, especially for nonprofits. So most people are familiar with the idea of Google Ads. You get typically on a search results page, you get 17 results. 4 at the top, 3 at the bottom are paid, and the 10 in the middle are organic. Google have changed the way that they present this information. And years ago, it used to have like a big banner behind it saying advert. They've taken all that off now. Now you just get this tiny little ad icon to indicate it's an ad. So most people don't always know they're clicking on an advert. But it's a paid method of getting traffic to your website. So you write an advert with a nice title, a nice description. You can add some other stuff into it. And then you say to Google, I will pay you if you show this advert when someone searches for this particular key term. Google make a lot of money out of it. In turn, businesses make a lot of money out of it. But it can be a very, very costly thing to do. However, Google are one of the very few companies within our sort of digital space that offer a lot for nothing. They give every nonprofit up to $10,000 per month, which is a huge amount of money. In English pounds terms, it's over £7,500 in free advertising every month. It's pretty simple to sign up to, and you can do a whole load of different adverts on it. You can do search ads, which are text-based, which is what I just spoke about in this example there on the right-hand side. You can also do display ads, so things like images, videos, HTML5 pages, which are a bit more interactive, and you use that across the Google's display network. So when you're going to certain maybe news outlet pages and you have these banner adverts that come up at the top, This is called Google's display network. You can have adverts there and you can have them for free. It's definitely worth signing up for, but not it's not the easiest of processes. So you need to have a good foundation knowledge of Google Ads. That in itself is a bit challenging, but you can use Google Digital Garage to understand a bit more. You have to sign up for, and it's a bit of a lengthy process to sign up for. You have to fill out all these forms. You have to be registered with something like Charity Digital, because that's what Google uses their partner to authenticate that you are a charity and you're entitled to them. And then you have to pass a simple test. Now, I did have someone ask me a couple of years ago, can I cheat? You can, but Google aren't that hot on it. You can have another browser window open and Google the questions and answers. But it's like when you see those pictures come up and it will say which one is the apple. They make it really obvious. They just want to make sure that people aren't signing up to use this platform for scrupulous purposes. To maintain your Google non-profit status, though, and to make sure you keep getting access to this money, you need to be careful about how you manage your ad account. So you need to maintain a good quality score. There's lots of factors that indicate what is and what isn't a good quality score, but it's making sure that your adverts link to something relevant. So if you've got another business and you think, well, I can set up a non-profit one and I can use Google Ads to then generate more traffic to go to my business, that's a big no-no. They'll close your account straight away and you will never, ever get one back. So you've got to be really careful to make sure that you manage this in a responsible manner, which is why you partner with an agency to help you kind of manage this, to make sure it's done well. And if you are going to do the Google Ads stuff, make sure you've got tracking set up. Make sure you've got something like Google Analytics set up there so that you can track to see how it works for you. Google Ads will give you a certain level of information, but having something like Google Analytics will just fill in those little gaps where they might be. And then, can you do this yourself? Yes, you can. Anyone can. It might take a bit of time. You might need a bit of help, but you can do this yourself. But sometimes you might need to speak to a few outside people to get that sort of nudge in the right direction, shall we say. I've kind of summarized everything we've spoken about and some do's and don'ts. As I said at the beginning, this is not an exact science. There is not one particular formula that you can roll out and will work for everyone. But there's some simple guidelines that you can follow to make sure that things work well. So make sure your metadata is correct. That is the title and description of your page. Make sure you use hierarchical content. Make sure you have hierarchy in your content. One day I'll learn to say that proper word. So that's heading 1s, heading 2s, heading 3s, using paragraphs in between that to break your content up so that it's readable for a user, but also readable for a search engine. Make sure your content is original. Do not plagiarize. It will only harm you in the long run. Use images and videos, but optimize them where you can. If it's a video, host it within YouTube and use YouTube's embed link to embed it onto your website. That way, when it comes to your FCP, which is your first content for paint, it sees that that's an outside video and doesn't devalue your score based on that. So, long way of saying, don't use large images. Keep an up-to-date presence on social media. It's important for anyone nowadays, but it's important for search engines as well. Get a Google business listing. It's free and it's simple. And think like a user. What would you search for and make that relevant to what your content is on your website? So if you're, I'll use, because I work with a prostate cancer charity, for them, it's not about certain things like just searching prostate cancer. It's what are the signs of prostate cancer? I've just been diagnosed with prostate cancer. What can I do? So it's thinking about those long search terms that people are likely to search for, because it's easier to be ranked for those rather than individual keywords, which is really challenging. Again, add some localization into that by having South End-based stuff. Again, that helps with your organic listings. Again, consider your URL structures. I've got some examples there of how you can just copy something without changing the URL tag. Make sure it's relevant to exactly what you're talking about. Make sure your website's fast to load. That comes back to the load times, 1.8 seconds being your kind of benchmark. If your website's too slow for a start, people would probably get a bit annoyed with it. But secondary to that, Google will start to devalue your rankings based on that. And make your content easy to read. Going back to this kind of visually impaired idea, as much as it is for a user to read it, it is for a computer to read it. So don't suddenly have dark blue text on a black background because people can't see that. Make sure that you have good contrasting colors, but make sure it's laid out correctly so that a search engine can also review that information. Do not get dodgy backlinks. They are not worth it. Don't keyword stuff. Just to go over that again, that means when you start to put the keyword too many times into one paragraph of text to the point where that paragraph actually makes no sense to anyone. Don't put all your keywords on page one. It seems like a really obvious thing to do, but it's a big no-no. Don't put everything on one page. It's the whole phrase of don't put your eggs in one basket. Try and split the information out over the pages, but making sure the pages are relevant to the content that you're talking about, and therefore making each page relevant to a particular keyword or key phrase. Try not to make lots of changes in one hit. If you go for a day of making loads and loads of changes, it's not necessarily a good thing. Go for little tweaks and changes here and there. Make a few changes one week, make a few changes the next week. Sometimes you're better off making a few changes, then monitoring where your positions are, then evaluating what changes you're going to make next. You don't want to rush in, make loads of changes, then you drop off of Google, and then you've got a long way back to kind of recoup those placements. Don't copy someone else's content. Just don't do it. That's it. That's me waffling for 49 minutes about search engines and Google Ads. We've kind of brushed along the surface of it. It's a whole world. It's a dark art in some form. And so, yeah, please don't be put off by it. Anyone can do it. Sometimes you just need to sort of learn the basics and follow a process. So, yeah, I'll hand back to Roger for a second so I can take a breather.
That was fantastic. Thanks, Dan. I think not just the technical details that you provided, but also that background information around, the dominance of Google as an example. I wasn't aware that it was 92% of all traffic comes from Google. So this is obviously a really important topic when we're thinking about traffic to our websites. But thank you very much.
I think the only reason that quite a lot of traffic still comes from Bing is the fact that Microsoft forces it as a default when you get a new computer. So people tend to use Bing to search for Google.
Yeah, that's a good point. And and even when you then try and change the default, it tries to not let you, doesn't it? Okay, brilliant. So we'll move on to questions. We've got one from Ashley in the chat, which I'll read out. For Ashley, it is, what do you recommend doing with old blogs on a website, e.g. if the information was about an event that is now past? Is it best practice to archive and delete it, or update the blog to say it's now past?
Best practice, I would say, have a sort of a historic events section on the website where you can talk about historic events. It's still valuable content. Don't ever remove it. Going back to that principle of content is king. Keep it on there, but make sure that people know that it's for past events, not present events. So by having like an archive page that talks about past events is the best way to put it on there.
It's a good point. And then it's not getting in the way, is it, of anyone that's coming to your site with the new content, but it still has the power for the keywords and search that you were talking about earlier.
Definitely. I made reference to a company I'm working with that have got a conference. They have one particular blog that ranks number 3 for a particular search term, but that blog was written 5 years ago. It still ranks as number 3. And every now and then we have this conversation about getting rid of old content. Don't do it. We just put it in an archive section. It's still useful and people still find it. But importantly, once someone's found that content, they then go on to look at the rest of the website. So you never want to put people off of that.
Thanks, Dan. We've got a question from Bex next, which is, how can a small, newish non-profit compete with the kind of traffic big companies or organizations already get? If they already have a strong brand, it seems daunting to compete with searches for that.
It is daunting. But, David and Goliath, the little men will always win. It's hard, and it goes back to this whole idea of the tortoise and the hare. It's not going to happen overnight, but there are ways to achieve certain results. I'd probably urge you to look at something like the Google nonprofit ad fund that's available, because it's a good way of making you actually rank 1, 2, and 3, and 4 at the top of the page for certain keywords. So that'd be a very quick and easy way to get some wins, but create some good, valuable content. Depending on if your organization is local or national, again, there's the sort of various tactics. If it's a localized thing, focus on local and make it all about local, then you can start to build out for it. But if you start to become ranked for number one locally, actually Google will kind of look favorably along that as sort of time goes on. I'm sitting in the office of one of the companies I work with at the moment. I've hijacked their meeting room, and we were having a chat about natural listings earlier. They've got something like 20,000 products on their website. Now they did a lot of work with SEO to get to a certain point. What's happened now is actually because Google have started looking favorably on them as an authoritative on their particular type of product, their natural rankings are going up without doing much work. So it's a really good position to be in. But I suppose what I'm trying to say in answer to your question is, don't be afraid by it. Little things turn into big things. Try and speak to maybe some local people to get some backlinks. Try and start to build a profile. I'd probably, to get some quicker wins, I'd look at the Google Ads stuff.
Great. Thanks, Dan. And I guess it's all about being niche, isn't it? Because that big organization might be spreading themselves quite widely.
Definitely.
And happy to share your information on the SABS website and across our socials. So please reach out about that. You've also got local websites like Live Well Southend, where you can, be added to their directory, and it would help with your backlinks as well. Thanks, Bex. The next question is from Tim. What tools can you use to do an audit on your existing backlink profile?
So there's not many tools out there that will do it for free. However, one of the slides that I'm going to show everyone shortly, so I've got some services that we've sort of heavily discounted for non-profits that we can help you generate that kind of information. So we can help generate reports on website usability, current SEO rankings, and kind of give you a foundation to sort of work from. But not only that, we're sort of putting some time into that to say, look, if you want to do one of these audits, we'll sit down with you for a couple of hours, review the information in the audit, and then actually take some actionable stuff away from it and almost create like a checklist for you to achieve certain things. Because you can't shoehorn everyone into doing the same thing, because it just doesn't work. And some people are at different points in the journey. So I can't kind of offer a master checklist to everyone, because it's kind of irrelevant. So that's where we kind of created this niche package to sort of do a one-to-one sit down, create the audit, use that to sort of benchmark where you are, then create a list of actions off the back of it.
Great. Thanks, Dan. I can see Tim was nodding away there. And we've got a question from Ashley. In terms of email newsletters and marketing, would our website benefit more if we linked to news stories on our website within the email rather than putting the text in full in the email?
I would do that regardless. I'd always make sure that when you send an email out, and we're actually covering emails next week, so come along for that session. Your email should never be this long chain of information, because people get bored very quickly. So actually, by having little snippets of information and then linking to them is best practice. In terms of SEO, it doesn't actually add much, because linking from an email doesn't really class as a referral link. But for good practice in general, yes, the main news article should always sit on the website. That's where you want the lengthy content, and then your email should just link to it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. It's something that we've looked at over the years for our weekly email at SABS, because we get a huge amount of content to share from the sector. And what we found was, as well as it bringing visitors to your website, it allows you to link to other things and services on your website as well. So that's something that we implemented. Question from Gavin, which is organic versus Google Ads. Do you have any general advice on how to allocate time and budget between the two?
Oh, that's a tough question. There's no exact science to it. The organic stuff is a long, slow process. The thing with Google Ads, sometimes that it might take a couple of weeks to actually get it up and running, but the maintenance of it is much easier over time, because Google will help you it'll come up with some ad ideas and things like that to sort of point you in the right direction. It's a really hard question. It's as long as it is short. Most people, when I'm working with sort of commercial companies, we tend to, depending on where they are on their journey, we'll start with a higher Google Ads budget, because that gets some really quick, easy wins into the company, and then your SEO is down here. As your SEO starts to creep up in terms of your visibility and your rankings, then because you're ranking highly organically, then we start to bring the actual spend of the Google Ads down, because the idea is that the organic stuff long term is free, whereas ads will still cost you money. However, having said that, that works for commercial businesses. Within non-profits, because you get $10,000 a month free, I'd probably still keep that spend as high as you can, as long as it's relevant and to the point. But in terms of how you allocate your time, I suppose 50-50 would be my initial answer. But in terms of managing the Google ads, you could probably reduce the time you need to manage the Google ads over time, because they'll start to self-manage. You still have to keep an eye on it, and you still have to point it in the right direction, but it'll start to self-manage itself to a degree.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. Gavin, do you want to come in on
I hope
that?
that helps.
Well, thanks very much for the time and the answer on all of this stuff. You know, I guess I mean, obviously, like you say, the budget's free, so it's very tempting. It's really, I'm almost thinking about hygiene in a hygiene sense. Can you go direct to Google Ads and then we'll worry about the organic later? Or is it essential that you kind of clean up your act before you get too far into the ad side?
A bit of both, really. I'd say start to sign up for the Google Ads straight away. There's no harm in that. Just because you've got access to an account doesn't mean you need to start spending the money straight away. So I'd almost get that done as a prerequisite. One of the metrics that Google uses for the quality score of the adverts is actually linked to the website. So it likes to make sure that the website is relevant, make sure it's all laid out nicely, etc. So you kind of need to do a bit of housekeeping on the website to make the ads run optimally, but you can still run the ads without necessarily having to do that. You could also consider the idea of setting up a particular landing page that the adverts go to, that is just a one-pager on the website that still has backlinks internally, but has all the right information relevant to the ads, whilst you tidy up all the stuff in the background.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gavin.
No problem.
And then we've got one final question that I can see in the chat, which is there a way to prevent an old website from coming up in the search results?
To a degree, yes. I mean, sometimes you can just apply to the webmaster to take that website offline if you've lost access or control of it. There is a way that within Google you can disavow links, so you can turn around to Google and say, this website has a link to us, but we don't associate with them. You tend to have an agency kind of do that interaction for you on a different level. But yes, there is a way of removing search results, or certainly disavowing those backlinks from various websites.
Thanks, Dan. And I guess a slight extension to that is, if you've got old pages on your website, old URLs that are still being linked from Google, you can do a redirect, can't you? So
yeah, very much so. Various platforms make it easier than others. But anytime you've got a link, you should never just sort of bin it off to a 404 page, because that's a really bad user experience. What you should do, and most of the tools, WordPress definitely, Wix allow it, and most other website builders allow it, you can redirect some URLs to other URLs. There's ways of doing that, and it's really, really good housekeeping, because 404 errors they're a bit of a no-no for Google, but also just really bad user experience. No one likes them. So yeah, make sure if you ever get rid of any content, that you make sure you redirect that URL to a different page.
brilliant. Thank you. I can't see any more questions in the chat, so I'll bring it into the virtual room. Does anyone have any further questions for Dan? No? Okay, in that
That made
case,
it nice and easy.
yeah, well, it was because your slides were so good, the information you shared. I'll hand back to you then, Dan.
Cool. It's just a kind of a wrap up towards the end now. So I haven't done this. Good old technology. So yeah, to cover some of the stuff we've got coming up next week, 2 weeks time, we're talking about email marketing, and then our final session, which is 4 weeks from today, I've called it the top of the pops. It's the top 20 tools and platforms for charities to use. We've got some great stuff in there. There's stuff that's free, there's stuff that's really cheap. But I've linked in with a company called Charity Digital, which I think most people are familiar with. And there's some really good stuff in there that's relevant for anyone, irrelevant of where they are on the journey or what their skill set is. There's something for everyone. And then it kind of goes back to one of the questions about audits and workshops. So we're running a workshop with people. This is about looking at the content on your website to create a bit of a plan of action of what they can do to improve it. We're looking at things like keyword analysis, competitors, content gap analysis. That basically means what content should we have on the website that's not on the website already. looking at a backlink profile, having a look at the technical overview of the website, and we're sort of bundling that in with a couple of hours of our time to sort of say, look, these are the things you can do, these are the things we can do. You've got 2 hours of our time to do these things, and then we can help you sort of create a bit of a check sheet to go through those things. So we're doing that as a discounted for non-profits. And then the other thing, which depending on where you are, might be a better platform, which is a complete digital audit. So we're not just looking at SEO stuff, we're actually looking at every aspect related to your digital footprint. So we're looking at various different metrics for SEO, but also looking at some of the on-page stuff. Are you using call to actions properly? Have you got relevant buttons in the right places? Are you ticking all the other boxes? And we're bundling that up with a sort of an hour one-to-one discussion to sort of go through that audit, but create a bit of an action point list of things that need to be fixed and the order in which they should be fixed for. So there are a couple of things that we've put together, which we'll send out to everyone after the session. And I think the only other thing I've got to say is, if you've got any questions that you think of, whether it be in an hour's time, a week's time, a month's time, take a note of my details. Just give me a call, drop me an email. If I can, I'll happily answer. If I don't know the answer, I'll either research it or I'll put you in the direction of someone that's a bit more knowledgeable, because my knowledge is a bit sort of, what's the phrase, jack of all trades. I know a little bit of most things, but I've got a guy called Steve that I work with who's an SEO guru in my eyes. I refer to him quite a lot for stuff. He's had a once over this presentation. I kind of wanted to pull him into it as well, but he's busy. But yeah, I've got access to people that can help with certain things. So if you've got any questions, don't be afraid to ask. That's all from me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dan. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. I'll send a follow-up after the session, and we look forward to seeing you at future ones. Thank you.